Hello again and welcome back to the boat plans. This is the QA and comment video I promised to do, and now we're here with the boat plans, and I have collected some questions and comments in here and I try to answer them and also show what modifications I've done with the plans with these comments. So I have collected them from all over the internet, from the YouTube comments and from Facebook groups, Instagram, and from emails and stuff. And thank you very much. There's been really good comments. Some of them kind of make me thought of things a little differently, so we'll jump in those in just a moment. But let's start with some overall comments, not any particular point in the plans, but some kind of bigger lines. One thing I wanted to address first is that in many comments there was this kind of idea that I should make it the interior like more traditional way, especially the galley orientation. But there's one thing that in this plan kind of prevents me to do that, and that's the narrow hull combined with the deck saloon solution. So if we take a look at the plan and make a cross section in here, you can see that the deck saloon kind of pushes the walls of the saloon area. In traditional kind of galley orientation, the galley stove is right against the hull in here, but when there's the deck saloon and it's raised, we have to take the saloon walls a bit inwards. So there is really not that much room to do the traditional U-shaped galley into this deck saloon. So that is kind of one of the compromises we have to do with this plan when doing this kind of moderate wide hull. Another question was, should there be emergency exits? And of course there should be a way out from all the separate spaces around the boat. For example, if the main saloon here catches fire or something, you have to get out from all the different areas from the boat without going through the saloon. They're just not in there yet. Then there was a couple of questions or suggestions that I should do the second head and shower. As I mentioned in the video before, it really doesn't matter to me that there's only one head and shower. That's a cultural thing mostly, and when we are having such a limited space, that's not kind of the thing I want to do. I want to have a little more usable space on other aspects in the boat. And also, if having a composting toilet, what I will consider, I think there should be no kind of non-working head issues, which are quite common in traditional marine toilet installations. One big thing was the suggestion that I should move the sea berth, which was on the forward section of the boat. I should move it backwards to make it better accessible from the cockpit and also more center in the boat. And that is one thing that I have actually done already. So this is now the early version. We'll get back into that in just a moment. And another overall comment was that I should have adjustable water tanks for trimming the boat. And that is one thing I have already taken into consideration. You can see maybe on this image over here, there's a water tanks down there, and there is a possibility that I will build them in a way that you can pump the water from one side to another to trim the boat when going upwind. Those were the few comments from the overall design, and let's jump into some more detailed things. Okay, first of all, the dinghy. The thing that I asked comments especially was the dinghy, and there was a few suggestions from that, and one suggestion was that I should get a foldable dinghy that should go in the smaller space and it could be more easily stored back there. And that's kind of an interesting idea, and I have thought that already. The soft dinghy is of course nice to use. You can bump on the boat with that without any issues, and but it has also a downside. And I actually would love to have a dinghy that is sailable. So yeah, there are some things to consider when choosing the actual dinghy, but I think the space back there is what it really needs. At this point I won't reduce the space reserved for the dinghy storage. Yeah, anyway, the dinghy will be electric propulsion as well, so I won't need a big outboard to hang somewhere in there. Another things for the dinghy, there was a comment that I should make sure that the dinghy garage door is big enough. Yeah, of course. And I should make sure that the dinghy garage level is above the waterline. That's a good point. It is and it will be. And one question was why the dinghy garage is off center. And that's because for making this moderately wide hull a little more spacious with the stern cabin. So the stern cabin will gain a little bit more space when the dinghy garage is off-centered. This is the stern cabin. Now it's a moderately wide double berth here, but the dinghy garage is on the port side. All right, and quite many comments was given with the galley. So, okay, the orientation. As I already told, there is really no enough space to make the galley kind of traditional U-shape. There's not enough width with this hull shape and the deck saloon. So it has to be I-shaped, and I like it. I think it will be very good when designed properly. But one particular thing that people suggested that I should really have a top-loading fridge or fore and aft opening fridge, but not on the side, because when the boat heels and some wave comes, when the fridge is open, it will push all the stuff on the floor. That's kind of one good little detail that I will remember. Another very interesting comment was that the galley should be on the port side of the boat. So in this original plan, the galley is on the starboard side here, which it was from the beginning. But the one suggestion was that I should move the galley on the other side, that when the boat is on the port tack, so when the wind is coming from the port side of the boat, you need to give way to others. So it's important to have good visibility when you're on that tack. So it's better to have the galley on that side, so you're higher and you can see better outside if there is another boat coming or near or something like that. And that's a kind of very good practical advice. And at first I thought that it's not really possible, but we'll get back into the updated plans in a while. So I actually done that change. And then let's jump to the head. And as I mentioned, there will be just one head. That's a no-brainer. But one comment was that I should have a separate shower area to keep the toilet dry. So yeah, in this plan this is kind of one space, but there definitely will be a wall, not curtain, but a wall between here to make the shower areas is only the wet space, and this other side of the head will be dry. So yeah, important thing for me. I'm quite seriously considering going with fully composting toilet. One advantage to have the toilet kind of high on the boat is that there is quite a lot of space. There can be a really big enough container under the toilet to hold the poop. And I think that toilet should be separating the liquids from the solids, so there will be not that much smell, but also the container will last much longer. So there's that. And one interesting thing was that I got many comments that I should orientate the toilet differently so that I'm facing forward, and one comment was that it should be sideways, and one comment that it should be backwards like it is in here. And yeah, there was really not right answer in that matter, but I think that most important thing is that the area where the toilet actually is narrow enough so you don't have too much room on the sides to being bashed against, so you can hold on something and be kind of between two walls and hold yourself in there. And right on the next of the toilet there is this wet locker that gave good comments that this is definitely a good idea, and one comment was that the wet locker is never too big. But I think this solution here, what I've done, is quite good, because there is also a possibility to use the actual shower in addition for this locker if there's some more people with those gears. So yeah, I think this will work. And one interesting idea was to make the locker lower so I could get some kind of view or window on top of the locker. So there could be view from the inside to outside over the locker, like somewhere over here. That's kind of interesting idea. I have to take a look at that. There is room underneath there, so I could definitely drop the locker down. But yeah, that would be a good option. There's only one issue that I have thought already, that when sailing at night, if there's a window from inside to the cockpit, you can't use the regular light inside if you're doing food or something in here and another person is steering the boat outside, so it will ruin your night vision. But I have to think about that. That was a good idea and definitely something to look at. Then there was some interior detail questions or comments. One suggestion was that I should have sliding pocket doors for head and other places to maximize the usable space, and that's definitely a good idea. I will take a look at that. For example, in this orientation, the head doorway here actually could be a sliding door. I'm not sure if there's a room on all the doors. That there's actually not that many of them either, but I will take a look at that. That's a good idea. Then there was one comment that I should round all the tabletops and basically everything to prevent injuries when bashing around in the waves. So yeah, of course that's a no-brainer. It definitely, all these corners need to be rounded and all the tabletop corners and, well, everything should be rounded to prevent any injuries. And one detail for the interior was that dedicated navigation table. So I mentioned that most likely I won't have a dedicated nav station inside the boat. So if you take a look at this cockpit here, when you have a proper chair, proper view all over and quite a lot of space around you here, everything should be able to use from here, the electronic charge I mean. But if there is any need, if something goes very wrong and all the spares are done and GPS doesn't work at all, there is possibility of course to use the main saloon table as a navigation chart table. The table here will be big and versatile, so I don't think that's a real issue in this case. Maybe I could make a kind of a special storage for big charts near the table here, but yeah, I think that's very rare to use actual big charts in real life. And one suggestion was that I should take a look at if I can do the kind of hidden workshop solution that Sirius Boats has. So that's a very neat idea. I have a lot of space underneath the saloon floor here, or sole, and there's definitely a possibility that I could make some kind of hatch or moving or openable seat or something to get a good versatile workshop underneath there. But most likely I will do the workshop area at the front cabin instead of this berth, because it's not really usable on the go anyway, and yeah, it would be good to have dedicated space for everything. All right, let's see here, what else do we have? There's a couple of more comments and questions. One was that should I have a separate sail locker, fender locker from anchor chain? And the answer is yes. The chain should definitely be on the separate space from that, because the chain always will be muddy and dirty and have rust and kind of things with it. So I have actually done some additional plans on the other boat right there. So we'll jump into that in just a moment and I'll show you the solution. But as for storing sails, this boat really doesn't have that many sails to store, because as you remember, there's only two identical mainsails and maybe a couple of big light wind sails, and those light wind sails are the only ones that need to be stored somewhere. So there's no head sails, no storm sails, or nothing separate sails like that, or maybe storm sails, but they are small. So there is not the need for massive sail locker with this boat. One little detail that someone gave, that I should have proper openable gates on the side and also proper cleats on the sides of the boat. Of course, this size of boat really needs a really good cleats on the middle as well on either end. So yeah, but the gate in the middle, that's a good thing to have. Yeah, then there's a few more technical advices and ideas. One idea that I should make the bulkhead between the dinghy garage and the technical compartment tilted, so that I will gain more room at the technical compartment. And that's actually a good idea. there is a room below the dinghy garage here, as you can see, that I could make quite much more room for the technical stuff under there. And as we are now in the technical compartment, there was a question that will I put all the kind of dirty stuff there, and definitely yes. At this point the boat most likely will have some kind of diesel generator in there for cold climates and making electricity when there's no wind and no sun and there's cold, like always in here. There will be the generator and the heater, both working with diesel, so there's only one fuel in the boat. And the heater will be there if not using the stove type, the reflex or similar kind of non-electric stove kind of heater. But that would take some room inside, so maybe I will do more traditional diesel heater down there. But it will be in that compartment. And the diesel tank and all the filters and equipment needed handling the diesel will be there to prevent all the smells going inside the boat. Addition to those, the biggest electrical devices will be there, like chargers and inverters and stuff like that, that will have some fans and produce noise and heat and stuff. And one technical detail, maybe not detail, kind of a big deal, is that I should put double motors. And yes, that's one thing that I will definitely do. And after watching Sailing Human's video for a few months ago, when they were testing in Croatia that new Elan, if I remember right, that had double ocean volt motors in that, and it was kind of a no-brainer. Of course it should be done like this. You have double motors, you can handle the boat and it will maneuver perfectly, and you don't need a bow thruster. And that's kind of very neat idea. In this case I'm having a double keels in this boat, so there will be of course double sail drives behind those keels. And of course one thing is that I could have much smaller motors. Instead of one big motor, I could have two smaller motors that should be much cheaper and lighter. And of course this is this redundancy. If one fails, there's another to use. Double motors it is. And then there's only a couple of more things. One question or tip for the rigging: I should have separate winches for the halyards and downhauls, and that's a very good idea. I haven't thought that too much yet. If we take a look at this plan in here, the idea is that the main sheets from the both of the sails will come on the left side. All the other ropes, the halyards, downhauls, all the reefs and everything else will be on the starboard side. So there should be at least 2 winches on the starboard side operate the sails properly. So maybe one is enough on the port side, but there should be 2 winches on this side, so you can raise the sail and tighten the reef or whatever system I will have. I'm still kind of interested to use furling booms with this boat, and I would like to have some comments and experiences of furling booms, if anyone has. Thank you. The last thing here was a question about water tightness, that will I have some watertight bulkheads and compartments? And the answer is yes, of course. That is one thing I have already thought. If we take a section here, you can see that of course the crash bulkhead will be right on the front there on the sail locker. That will be watertight, but also the front cabin bulkhead will be watertight with additional watertight door. The next section is a bit more difficult to make watertight, but of course the bulkheads below here, below the waterline here, will be watertight. And the bulkhead here of course will be watertight to prevent any water coming in. And lastly, the bulkhead between the technical compartment and the dinghy garage will be watertight, but also the floor or the sole of the dinghy garage will be watertight, because the steering mechanism will be underneath here, and if that fails and gives a leak, it should not be able to leak into the boat or in the dinghy garage or something. But this sole will be above the water level anyway. All right, I think that was all the questions I have collected and all the tips. There were quite many of them and from very different perspectives, and that's really something that I was looking for with this thing. And there was fortunately not that many comments that said that my plan is just a piece of garbage. So I think we're on the right track. Of course, there's many opinions that what should boat look like and stuff, and I don't care about those anyway. So, but lastly, let's jump back to the plans. I have used a few evenings already with the plans, and now I have the version, not maybe 2.0, but 1.5, I would say, and it's right in here. So I did some kind of mock-up of rudder here already, and there is a rudder mechanism fitted under there. It should fit there properly already. If we take a look, the changes had done mostly inside. So if we jump inside from the cockpit, right in here, you can see immediately that I have changed the orientation of the interior completely. So the head and shower is still on their original place. I've added some additional wall between there to mark up the shower area. That's looking quite good in my opinion. That's the head and sink right there. But now the corridor to the down below goes on the port side, and I have changed the galley to this side so that when the boat is heeled on the port tack, you are a little bit higher and most likely going to see properly all over. But I have ditched the separate table here at the front to make more usable leaning room to the galley. So there was a little bit of problem that the area where you can work in the galley was a little bit too short. So now it's much longer, and there's quite a lot of space in the middle here to have a proper fridge inside that compartment there. The main saloon sofa is very long. It's only on the one side, but there is enough room for sleeping there, and have a workstation on here, and there is a possibility that I would put the separate screen for working and watching TV or anything into that mast. You can turn it around and see it from the cockpit on outside or basically anywhere. So I think this thing looks quite good, and the table is even bigger than the original plan. And this all kind of started from the idea that I should move the Berth from the front to the stern side of the galley, and I first tried to put it underneath the galley on this starboard side, but I decided to ditch that idea. It took too much of the space in the galley. So now it is actually underneath the sofa here. There's a proper good bunk there for seakeeping. It's a little bit raised from that lower floor, and I think that will work very well. Of course, all these corners are rounded, so don't care about that. And as we changed this and ditched the Berth from underneath the galley, it gave quite a much more room inside the actual galley furniture. So now there is plenty of room to put the dishwasher and all that necessary stuff that need to be in the galley, and also the laundry machine can be fitted there. And if you go down below, this is basically just mirror image from the original. There's nothing special about that, but it gives now a little bit more room on the galley side here. So there's going to be a massive hanging locker or something over here. So I think this looks and feels now very good, and it will work very well. You can give comments and any suggestions if you see any major flaws. And if we take a look from the outside, there's also something happened at the front here. So I have modeled 52 kilogram anchor here, which is a little bit on the bigger side, but it should fit on the front here, and there will be this kind of stainless steel doodad here that holds the anchor, and the anchor chain is planned to go within this pipe all the way back in here, and there is this space reserved for the windlass, and it should drop the anchor chain underneath it right in here. So there's a pipe, or maybe I can reserve all this space for the anchor chain. And if you take a look, the anchor chain is not on the bow, but it's at least 1 to 3 meters backwards. So the position of the weight is much better with this solution, and it frees up all the front space here for everything else, like sails or fenders, ropes and stuff like that. So I think this works very well. And of course there will be second anchor back there and more chain somewhere, yeah, but that's more like details. But yeah, as you can maybe see here, this is still very much work in progress, and I will go through and kind of make all the measurements correct here, and then I can start modeling the actual structures of the boat, because they will take some space, and I will have to modify the interior most likely when the actual structures are in there. So yeah, there's quite a lot of fiddling to do. But the most important thing, that the big lines, the big measurements, they all work already. So I can continue with planning, and none of the planning will go wasted. Yeah, I'm happy with this plan so far, and we will be back soon with the CNC router. I have done some wire soldering here. It's a job I really don't like that much, but it has to be done. There's still a few connectors to solder, and we will continue with that thing in next episode, I think. And on the evenings I will go further with this plan, and hopefully very soon there will be some answers for the boat shed. So I'm actually very excited to that and a little anxious, but we'll see how that goes. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, still please put them down below, and remember to subscribe. There is already, I think, now I will have to check, at this very moment there is 1700 subscribers. Woohoo! So thank you very much for that. As usual, remember to push the like, and we will see you in the next video. Bye!